the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?
What up, people? Peace, blessings, glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. Happy Wednesday. Hope all is well. Shout out to my poets, writers, content creators. You know what today is. Get comfortable. Like, share, repost, hype. Let the people know that we are online. One of my favorite segments of the week. Do me a solid. Get comfortable. If you got any questions, comments, leave them. I'll make sure they get highlighted. I'm going to lay back, enjoy the show with the rest of you, and without further ado, the woman of the hour.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Lindquist. For those of you that haven't met me before, I am a science fanatic. I come on Wednesdays and give talks on various scientific topics, sometimes other things. But I absolutely love to talk about things that are happening around the world. I have a master's degree in environmental education as well as a bachelor's in psych. So I do have a little bit of a background with a lot of what I talk about, but overall, I just love to have a conversation about things that are happening. So this week, I wanted to talk about the hurricane season. We're starting to see some of our major storms show up. And I thought it would be important to talk about, especially because this year is it's going to be different because of the El Nino that's going on. We currently are in an El Nino cycle, which means the ocean waters are warmer than they usually are. And this year it's extreme. It's an incredibly powerful El Nino. And so the ocean waters are hotter than ever before. And the reason that is related to hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones, is because with hotter water, you're able to fuel the storms more, and that allows the hurricanes to get bigger faster. So when you have warmer ocean waters, you're going to end up with storms that are able to rapidly intensify. And we've been seeing that. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a hurricane that hit Acapulco, Mexico. And this hurricane was unprecedented in that it intensified from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in it was only 12 hours or less than 12 hours, which is incredible. Just to, I've said this before, but I always like to refresh people's memories. The damage or the winds in hurricanes are what determine how big the hurricane is, how severe, what the category is. That's how at the end, they rate the tornado, the hurricane as to how severe it was. And these categories are broken up into wind speeds, because certain sets of wind speeds will produce certain amounts of damage. And that's how they're given the rating as well, is they'll survey the city and the areas that were affected by the tornado, and use that to estimate what the wind speeds were, on top of the actual readings that they get from their own instruments. So a Category 1 hurricane is 74 miles to 95 miles an hour, and that will snap trees, that will rip roofing off, that will do damage to power lines. And then the top of the scale, a Cat 5, which is a major hurricane, it's 157 miles an hour or higher. So the wind speeds, let's see, almost doubled in 12 hours, which is crazy. If a storm was able to materialize, a dangerous storm was able to materialize that quickly, that would be crazy. And I think the other thing that made that one so damaging is it happened at night. And so people didn't get a chance to really get adequate warning. But anyway, we've been having a lot more storms like that are intensifying very, very quickly in short spans of time, and are doing significant damage even to places that typically don't get storms that bad. And as I said, this is very strongly related to what we're doing to the planet. As we warm the planet, we warm the ocean, and it enables these storms to get bigger faster. And as suspected, we are starting to see that on the, let's see, where's the date on this? There's no date on this. We've already had our first Category 5 hurricane, which isn't unusual, but it is still early. The peak of hurricane season, I think, is around October to November, September, October, November time period. I think typhoons are flipped because of their location, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's generally unusual to get a storm that big at this point, because the ocean hasn't had as much time to accumulate heat as it does later in the summer and into the fall. But in both locations, or two out of the 3-4 locations that can have these types of storms, 2 of them have already had Category 5. Up towards Japan, they had a Category 5 typhoon, and it was called Typhoon Dolphin, and it was the fifth cyclone of 2026, which puts it ahead of 1997, which was one of the most severe El Niños we've ever had. So it tracks that you'd see 2 El Niño years with record-breaking cyclones, given the conditions that it creates. So that one, Typhoon Dolphin, had wind speeds that peaked at 165 miles per hour. I remember 2023 or 4, we had another Category 5 hurricane break the record with 155 miles an hour. And so now we have another new record a couple years later, 10 miles higher. That's another thing we can expect with hotter temperatures. It enables the air to move faster, and so you're able to get stronger winds, faster winds. So yeah, that one happened in the Asian side, the Northeast Pacific. And then we also had another one off the coast of Mexico. That one happened in started up in late July, and 24 hours later, it intensified to a Category 4 hurricane. So in a full day, it went up 5 different categories of wind speed. This hurricane ended up with maximum wind speeds at 160 miles an hour. Thankfully, I don't believe either storm did any damage. I think Typhoon Dolphin did. Let's see. I don't know. Actually, it might not be there yet. Yeah, I don't think any communities were actually affected by these storms, or if they did, it was minor. I haven't seen anything about damage from these storms, but yeah, it's still really important to pay attention to these connections and these patterns, because it can help us understand what we're potentially going to see this year, because we still have months left of hurricane season, and so there is a very strong possibility of getting very severe hurricanes / typhoons depending on where you're located. El Nino doesn't affect every area of the globe equally. Just because one area is getting stronger storms doesn't mean another area is going to be seeing incredibly strong hurricanes. But it's still like the conditions that are currently set up in the around the globe right now they have patterns. They have like you can look back at the past records and see what. Sorry, I have there's something in my throat, but I forgot to bring up water. You can see from history what conditions look like, what type of storms develop during past time periods that also had a strong El Nino or whatever conditions that you're looking at. And we are seeing 2026 is so far projected and turning into the most severe El Nino that we've ever had. 1997 and 1982 were the other two previous records. And we have surpassed both of them in terms of the severity of this particular El Nino. The oceans, when you measure the severity of an El Nino, it's based on the temperatures of the water. And we've been seeing that it's exceeded all past records. I think the only one that is currently kind of an equal comparison, is 1872, I believe. And that one was the most severe El Nino we've ever had in recorded history, which obviously isn't, we don't have that much time that this type of stuff has been monitored. So record's limited, but it still tells us a lot about what we're going to see, because just from my own research, there were a lot of really severe weather events. There was this one's actually based on scientific record, record-breaking droughts, and it ended up causing a famine that killed, I think it was like 30 million people or something. It was extremely high percentage of the population for that time period. So it can have catastrophic effects on our social systems, our infrastructure, our our communities, our houses, because with more heat in the ocean, with increased warming in the atmosphere, you're going to get greater swings and more severe events, both on both sides of the spectrum. More precipitation in the atmosphere leads to more precipitation falling back to, or sorry, I shouldn't call it that. More moisture in the atmosphere causes more precipitation, um, and it's it doesn't matter. Sorry, how am I going to explain this? It affects both snow and rain, because different conditions create actual weather. So even if the atmosphere is warming, you're still able to produce snow, but instead it's just going to be in larger quantities in a more punctuated period of time. Um, so yeah, we can expect certain effects as a result of the El Nino. And this, given the severity of this year, it's a lot of scientists are predicting that these storms are going to come in more severe. Granted, they also predict fewer hurricanes than usual, which is expected with El Ninos. Counterintuitively, you aren't going to get as many storms in an El Nino, but you'll still have kind of like this, what I said with the snowfall, how there's more of it in a punctuated period of time. It's going to be the same with the hurricanes, where you're going to have fewer hurricanes, but they're going to be way more severe than they were, and possibly coming back to back, because we've had that before in recent years. I don't remember the specific years, but we had a record of 2, or I think it was 3 hurricanes that were spinning all nearby each other. We've broken a lot of records in terms of quantity and severity and location, which is being affected by our decisions with the earth and the climate. So yeah, one of the prediction they've recently released the predictions for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. So this is just for the Atlantic. This does not cover any of the Pacific hurricanes, which would include anywhere on the, let's see, which direction is that? For me, it's north. Basically Japan, China, a lot of those countries there are not included in this, as is Mexico. Anyway, 9 storms for August. 4 would be hurricanes. 1 would be Cat 3 or higher. For June, why are they going backwards? Yeah, so by the end of the season, they expect 14 named storms. And when they say named, it means it's strong enough for it to be a registered storm, but it's not big enough to qualify as a hurricane. So tropical storms are given names because it makes it easier to track and like talk about, because then you don't have to say like Hurricane A and Hurricane B. You can actually use names for it. Anyway, they also expect 7 hurricanes and 3 Category 3 hurricanes or higher, which in terms of numbers is pretty normal. I've seen years get up to, like, I've seen them run out of letters, and that would be at least 20. So it is slightly under average, I'd say, just from my own understanding. I'm not an expert, so I couldn't say for sure, but yeah, that does seem seem below average. Um, and then the category 3 or higher, 3 also seems like relatively or low, below average. Um, this article in particular, Colorado State University, which is one of the biggest and most fundamental organizations in this country and honestly in the world for weather research and weather tracking. They're like the pinnacle of weather research and stuff in society. They're still expecting a below average hurricane season in the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean, and the rest of the Atlantic. They suggest that the El Nino in the waters of the Eastern Pacific will significantly reduce overall storm activity across the Atlantic and lower the odds of a major hurricane hitting the U.S. and the coastlines around the Caribbean. And this is, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but this makes sense because when you have the El Nino, the heat kind of transfers to different locations. And because this heat is kind of going more north, you probably would see a cooling of the atmosphere. And it also affects the air currents. So you're going to end up seeing differences in how hurricanes travel, differences in how moisture and storm systems kind of flow in general. So it does make sense that the Atlantic would see a below average season. And on the flip side, as I discussed earlier, Japan, or the seaboard of Asia, as well as Mexico, who are both in the Pacific hurricane zone, they are seeing record-breaking storms. So, as I had said, the El Nino doesn't affect every area the same way. In some areas, it's going to cause a decrease in the amount of hurricanes, while other places are going to see an increase. And the Pacific side just happens to be the side that gets the most affected by an El Nino. During La Ninas, the Gulf is more likely to get hurricanes, so and more of them. So it flip-flops depending on which cycle we're in. So now that we're in an El Nino, we're probably going to see a lot of the major hurricanes either going towards Mexico or up towards the coastline of Asia. So I want to also talk a little bit about what was it? I had my thing saved. The last El Nino, there it is. Where did you go? So I said that, oh, there you are. Okay. In 1997, which, as I said, was an El Nino, sorry, I just realized I misspoke earlier. The hurricane in Mexico, I think that was the one. I misspoke about the wind speeds. I think 200 is actually the record, or 190. I wanted to do a comparison of some of the 1997 hurricanes, and one of them hit 185. So yeah, there are storms that have been stronger. Anyway, during the 1997 hurricane season, they had 2 category hurricanes. If you remember from what I said before, this season is expected to have 3. So it would make sense. This one was a slightly less strong El Nino, but still quite significant. So kind of on par with numbers. There's Hurricane Linda and Hurricane Guillermo. Linda had winds that peaked at 185 miles an hour, which would very securely put it in the category 5 or Cat 5 category. With that level of winds, most houses are going to be destroyed. Your roof is going to fall in. Walls could be knocked down. Trees are going to be knocked over. Power poles will be disrupted. And they'll likely see power outages for weeks, months. A lot of the area you won't be able to live in for weeks or months, sometimes years, depending on how the insurance companies go. But this damage is absolutely catastrophic. And it would, any area that got hit, unless they did extreme hurricanes like preparation and stuff, would see significant damage. With 185 mile an hour winds, I'm not even like looking at the hurricane one anymore. I had to go to the tornado one because they have higher wind speeds than a hurricane. A F in tornadoes, it's Fujita scale, so it's F. It's an F3, which is considered a strong tornado. 158 to 206 miles an hour, so that's where the hurricane would fall under. And one of the things that a category 3 can do is it can flip trains. So, and it can like throw cars. So you're in a hurricane that can turn trains over and throw cars, heavy cars, as they specify in this. Forested areas would be completely uprooted. That's the type of winds that you have in a super typhoon or super hurricane, which exceeds the typical strength of a hurricane, of a tornado. A hurricane, I was right the first time. But imagine, like, some of these storms can take hours, sometimes days, or a day and a half to pass over an area. Can you imagine having tornado force winds all day? That would be devastating. So, and luckily, they actually stayed over open water. So even though they were extremely severe, they actually didn't cause very much damage from that. So yeah, that at least that ended well. That could well be what we see in this season, where we get a lot of really strong storms, but they're diverted offshore. That happened a few years ago, where we had a bunch of hurricanes coming in, but they kept veering off into the Atlantic, and so they actually never really made landfall with any major areas. But we obviously won't know until we go through the hurricane season. But it it seems like, just from the research I've done, from what scientists are saying, from the past data, um, from previous El Nino seasons, I would anticipate that we're probably going to see substantial storms that rapidly intensify, which it qualifies as rapid intensification if it goes up more than, let me get the actual. We have a specific 80% of major hurricanes undergo rapid intensification, which is an increase in the maximum sustained winds of a tropical cyclone of at least 35 miles an hour in a 24-hour period. So if hurricane wind speeds go up 35 miles an hour in a 24-hour period, that is considered a rapid intensification. So that one that I told you about earlier, that like it was at least 70 miles an hour in 12 hours. Yeah, these storms are definitely getting faster, and do this more often. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So given our understanding of this El Nino and how severe it is, understanding how it affects the different basins, the ocean basins, Atlantic, Pacific. I suspect that we'll probably see a decent number of storms, like 10 to 15 range, kind of basically what they said. But I think we'll also see some that are record breaking in terms of there's a lot of different ways that a hurricane can break a record. One is the speed of the rapid intensification. Another is the expansiveness of it, the size, the footprint that it has, the strength of its winds. They have two different ways to measure winds. There's wind gusts and sustained winds. Wind gusts are like temporary, like when the wind blows, but then it kind of like dissipates. You can get stronger wind gusts than you can sustained winds. Sustained winds, though, are the winds that don't stop. So when you go outside and it's just windy, as opposed to the occasional wind gusts that like blow in and almost knock you over. That's kind of the difference. Some storms can break records for wind gusts or wind speeds, sustained wind speeds, and you can also break records for precipitation. The most rain in a certain period of time. You can also have records for the damage that it did, other records that we would hate to have broken, loss of life, stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of estimate the severity of something, and there's a lot of different ways that a hurricane can kind of break records. But I think we'll see some of that this season, with the amount of heat that's available in the ocean. I also wouldn't be surprised if it broke records in more of like a locational sense, showing up in areas they haven't before, or a certain location that gets maybe small hurricanes or doesn't usually get them is getting a severe hurricane. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that as well. And granted, I don't think all of these are going to happen, but I think we will see some of these things happen with the storms that do show up. Um, it's definitely something that is, from an outsider's perspective, that loves storms and loves science. It's a cool thing to see. It's cool to like, this season is going to teach us a lot about the relationship between El Nino and hurricanes, especially because this is such a strong El Nino. It's a really good opportunity for research and understanding how these storms behave with certain conditions. And given that this is the most severe we've seen ever, it'll be a moment for science to learn from this. However, if you're in the path of these, or if you're in areas where you can get these, definitely not going to have the same feeling to them. However, I want to kind of talk about hurricane safety because you never know, like, with how all the conditions are changing, and both the earth and these new patterns of, like, climate patterns that we're seeing change. People who've never experienced a hurricane before could be impacted by a hurricane. It's very well possible that as the climate changes, we're going to start seeing shifts in who actually sees these storms. So, yeah, I really want to talk about hurricane safety as well, to make sure people have the proper information of what to do in as we kind of go deeper into hurricane season. One of the big things, and this honestly applies to anybody, is you want to have a disaster kit. A disaster kit typically includes food, water, safety supplies, such as like masks, gloves, stuff like that. I'm going to get more into it. And medical supplies for injuries or other minor to medium level health events. And then you also would want to have like spare clothes, stuff for your kids, stuff for your pets, and like the miscellaneous that will depend on the lifestyle of the people, as well as tools. You'll also want to have, again, for any disasters, you'll want to have like extra lighting available to you in case there's power outages. Having a mix of them is actually the best thing, because I cannot tell you how many times we've had a power outage and I'm like, I can't find the candles, the flashlight's out of batteries, we don't have the right batteries for that flashlight. So it's good to have many methods of providing light to yourself, just in case. But you'll want to have safety supplies both in your house and in your car in the case of a hurricane or disaster. You also want to, before I get into that, let me do the first aid. I mean, the hurricane kit, just so it's more on topic. I always like to use the ready.gov/kit website to remind myself. I have obviously a kit at home, and it's good to refresh this every like 3 to 6 months. Go through your kit just to make sure that you have updated it with things that you need, refresh things that could go bad. So yeah, ready.gov/kit is a really, really good one to use. And they have all sorts of different categories and stuff to think about. People with disabilities, older adults, caregivers, pets and animals, winter ready, summer ready, evacuation, shelter, plans for locations, home fire escape plan. Like they have a whole bunch of resources if you wanted help with creating your disaster kit. Great website to look at. I'm not sponsored. I just like the website. In a basic disaster kit, also, every person should have their own kit. You should have, like, you can have one for like the tools and shared objects and stuff, but every person should have their own bag with some food, some clothes, some water, stuff like that, in case you get separated. So basic emergency kit: water, 1 gallon per person per day. So you'll need, if you have a family of 5, you'll need 5 gallons times however many days. I always suggest 5 to 7. But I've also seen recommendations like 3 to 5 days. But I generally say 7 days. So have water on hand. Have water available both. Go that way. Take that to grandma. Take that to grandma. At least this is what I do. I have gallons of water under my sinks and in the bathrooms. And I also have bottled water available. That way, we have water for drinking, but then we also have water set aside if like the plumbing, something happens with it, and we have stuff to cook with, stuff to wash hands and do other things with. So yeah, make sure you have water. Prioritize the water. This is one of the most important resources you could possibly have. Also food. You want several day supply of non-perishable food. This includes really long-lasting foods like crackers, and I don't know if oat milk qualifies, but I feel like that would last a long time. Canned foods, obviously, are the big one. Make sure that you aren't getting things that need a lot of prep. So, yeah, have food available for the whole family, enough for the whole family, and try to get things that you know they like, because there's nothing worse than being stuck, or like, you experience a disaster and then you don't want to eat any of the food that you brought with you. Really important, really, really important. NOAA weather radio and a hand crank radio. Personally, I feel like you could probably get, I think they have an all-in-one, but NOAA weather radio. If you are in a location that gets tornadoes, hurricanes, snowstorms, freak wind events, stuff like that, have a weather radio, because one, some of them have emergency features where if you can send out like a beacon or it beeps, there's a couple different types. And it can also like alert you. You can, I don't know if you have to set it or not, but sometimes if there's an emergency alert, they'll like add a beep with it to wake you up. So get one of those. Very, very important. Flashlight, as I said, or for around the house and stuff, candles, headlamps. I have like lanterns that you can, like really long lasting little lanterns that you can just open and they turn on. First aid kit. And that should include stuff for like minor cuts. You need antibiotics. You need, like, you fell and twisted your ankle and you need a wrap. Like, you should have those types of things. And you should also have the like painkillers, like the over-the-counter comfort things or like heartburn, stuff like that that you can possibly encounter, um, as well as medication that is important, asthma inhaler, diabetes medication, heart medication, like you, whatever it is, like make sure you have extra in your first aid kit, that you can use if you are have to evacuate. A whistle. This one, I'd say don't put it in your bag, put it around your neck. That way, if you get trapped or something, you don't have to like freak out because, oh, you can't reach your backpack. You have it just like right there. And again, one for each family member. Um, Dust mask, gloves, things to kind of stay clean. I also have a portable like shower that I bought, like a, it's like a thing you hang up, almost like an IV bag, and then you can like shower yourself off. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but it's comforting to know that I could still kind of wash myself somehow, or even like have a sink kind of situation. Obviously, I wouldn't be using groundwater, but yeah. Plastic sheeting, scissors, and duct tape if you're going to shelter in place, because you can put it over the windows, especially if they break. And then you want bags and plastic ties for personal sanitation, as well as like moist towels. Have a wrench or pliers available in your house. I know a lot of people might not have that tool at home for whatever reason, but you should have one, especially if you're in a house, because you'll need to turn off the utilities. In any sort of disaster, you want to turn off specifically the gas, because you can have like fires caused by the damage the disaster does to your house. Also, manual can opener, and I repeat, manual. You do not want to have an electric can opener that is not charged when a hurricane hits or an earthquake strikes. So a manual can opener for your food. Also, don't forget the can opener, because there's nothing worse than you have canned foods but no can opener, so you don't have food. You'd also want to have local maps, just in case you have to evacuate on foot and there's no electricity, there's no cell service. And then have a phone charger, and like a backup, those charger battery things that you can use. Have those on hand. And then additional stuff that are nice to have, and honestly very helpful, and probably anyway. Soap, hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, obviously for hygiene. I already said this one. Prescription drugs. The non-prescription medications, pain relievers, antacids, laxatives, stuff like that. Whatever you might need. Eyeglasses. If you have glasses, make sure you have those, or make sure you have a prescription paper or something, just in case they break. Contact lens solution, or the contacts themselves, make sure you have your eyewear and everything you need to care for it. If you have a baby, make sure you have the bottles, the wipes, the diapers, the things that you would need day to day for that baby. Pet food, extra water for your pet. Don't forget your pets. Just like people, they need to drink and eat, and it does not stop during a hurricane. So you need to make sure you have all the supplies for your pet just in case. If you have an animal that relies on external heating and lighting, such as reptiles, fish, whatnot, what I've done is I have an external battery that I don't think it's in here. I have a couple of them around the house as like if the power goes out, then I can still use it to charge my stuff. But it's a big external battery. It lasts like 99 hours. I have all my pet stuff put in. I have my. Sorry, distracted my children. Oh yeah, I put all of the cords and stuff that my pets need, the heating pad, the UV lamp and all that stuff. I have a gecko. It's plugged into that. So even if the power goes out, the light will still work. The heater will still work. You also would want to have cash available or traveler's checks just in case you don't have access to your bank. Any important documents that you have, put them in a waterproof container or have them saved electronically. Have warm blankets, sleeping bags for people in case you have power outages. And I'm probably, if you're getting a hurricane, you might not need a really warm blanket, but you'll still want blankets for each person in case you do have to evacuate and end up in some center somewhere. Change of clothing suitable for where you are, as well as sturdy shoes. And flip-flops are not sturdy shoes. Crocs are not sturdy shoes. You want to wear boots. I highly suggest you use something that is both waterproof and has closed toes, because you really don't want to be, if there's already damage going around you when you leave the house, or even afterwards, like you're going to be stepping on trash and all sorts of stuff. So you don't want to have flimsy shoes. Have a fire extinguisher just in case. I have one by my oven already. Good thing to have, even if you never use it. You'll wish you did if there was a moment for that. Matches in a waterproof container. You can also get waterproof matches where they have wax on the outside, and you can just, and then if it gets wet, it's not an issue. But have matches on hand for those candles, for whatever you might need it for. Ladies, supplies, you know what I'm saying. You also could have extra like food items or for food, like paper cups, plates, paper towels, plastic utensils, stuff like that. That way they have something to eat those foods, the food items that you brought with. Paper and pencil, super important. And for kids, have books, games, puzzles, something for them to do, because you might have to be waiting for a very long time for everything to be ready for you to go back home. So yeah, have stuff for your kids as well to entertain them. And after you've made this kit, make sure you don't forget about it. Keep refreshing the items. Keep the kit in a cool, dry place, especially if it has like cans of food in it. And have this kit in a designated place that's easy to get to. If you have to leave your home fast, make sure that all the family's members know where the kit is. And as I said, have it in a place that when you're running out the door, you can just grab it and go. And you don't have to think about it and like, oh, I have to run upstairs first. Because hurricanes are one thing, because you can see them coming, you can hear the warning, you can like leave before it arrives on shore. But with stuff like tornadoes and earthquakes and fires, you often don't get that choice. So make sure that you do have that in a location that is easily accessible, because that would really suck if you had all this preparation done and then you didn't have access to it because you put it somewhere that was hard to get to after the disaster. Um, so yeah, again, this is on ready.gov/kit. And it has a bunch of different languages and, as I said, breakdowns of other stuff like how to build a kit for your car, how to prepare for at a low or no cost, like financial preparedness. Um, so it's very, very helpful. And I suggest, even if you don't live in an area that's plagued by disasters all the time, if it's relatively quiet, you don't have big storms, I'd still have one, because you never know what could happen, why you might need to very quickly leave your house. A lot of really weird things can happen to people that you'd never expect. So having an emergency kit, better safe than sorry. An additional thing that I want to add on is with the warnings. When you see the warnings on TV, when you see them telling people, if you're in these areas, you should leave, listen to them. Whether it's for fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, if the people on the news are telling you to take shelter, if they're telling you to get out of the location that you're at, if they're telling you that this particular disaster is unsafe and could put your life at risk, listen to them. I promise it is much better to leave and be wrong than it is for you to lose your life because you didn't think that it would happen to you. That is unfortunately a very common sentiment from people. I see that a lot. I do research, like I've watched a lot of stories of people in disasters. I like to understand how people respond to disasters because it tells you a lot about how people are willing to act towards other situations. And since I study climate change and action, this does come up a lot because it's a lot of the same thinking. Where if it doesn't affect me right now, it's not going to affect me and I shouldn't worry about it or shouldn't care about it. But it does. And so when you get these warnings from the news, they're not just doing it to fearmonger. They're doing this to get people out of an unsafe area and prevent deaths. And so you 1,000% want to listen to them. It is it is an easy thing to do beforehand. But when you are watching this storm bear down on you and you decided not to leave, and now you're stuck, that's a lot harder to deal with because then now they have to come to your house and rescue you. You might have to endure flooding. There's a lot of consequences to leaving after the warning, including not being able to make it out in time. This also, as I said, goes with fires, with tornadoes. If they tell you that you are in imminent danger where you are at, listen to them and find a way to get out of the way. So before I end the stream, I wanted to read this poem. I wrote it about Hurricane Helene in September of 2024. Hurricane Helene affected 22 states in the U.S., and some areas received over a foot of rain in 72 hours. This was considered a once-in-a-thousand-year event and broke a record in North Carolina, a flooding record in North Carolina by 1.5 feet. And it caused 2,000 landslides, $50 billion of damage, and 200 deaths, making it the third deadliest hurricane in modern U.S. history. So I wrote the poem about this event because of how iconic and tragic it was. So this one is called Helene. It comes to the unprepared, not without warning, but without heed. It comes like many before, but no doubt not like any other. Weather lapping at windows and doors, knocking on walls, demanding entry, driving wet bullets into shuttering glass. Darkness arrives, brought on by failing forests and rushing gusts, eager to escape heaven's clutch. The naive, the unable, now marooned on landbound islands as mud and flood wash out precious connection. Trees with no grip, boulders and cars, pieces of human lives become shrapnel and invisible snares across land under siege. Rivers from nowhere rearrange neighborhoods like a toddler monopoly game, cleansing foundations of their inhabitants, stealing the future and past. Mountains barrel in with sediment and stone, turning communities to quarries, leaving boulders as doorstoppers and silt rolled out like red carpet as unwanted earthly decor. Flailing limbs cling to roofs and furniture with the strength of faltering hope, praying for deliverance from their waterlogged pain and the dirt stuck in their teeth. Among the ruins of familiarity, 1 second.
Own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?